Okay, so we are live now.
All right.
Which one of you do you want to go somewhere, or do you want me to do it?
Jennifer, I can't hear you. Can you hear her?
I can't hear you either.
Okay. I don't know what's going on.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Maybe I had mine. I don't know.
But what did you say?
I was figuring maybe we can start with number 5.
Okay.
Um, about how women were depicted.
Okay.
I kind of felt like they were depicted as slaves in a sense because um, like at 12:45 it talks about how the foreman would walk behind the women as they were working.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't let them stop for anything, bathroom breaks or anything.
There,
Um,
there was that.
that made me feel like they were being treated like slaves.
Well, and their work days were so long. It's like 14
They
hours.
Mm-hmm.
worked 14 hours and they were making like $2 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And did you catch that that was before deducting for like thread and
Mistake.
needle? Um, but the thread and needles, they were deducting from their pay for thread and needles, and
Well, right at the
that
very beginning,
was
at like 3 minutes, there was one of the narrators said the previously forgotten women were now suddenly remembered. And when
mm-hmm.
you brought up how women were depicted, it took them dying for people
Yeah.
to actually recognize how many
Um,
people
And
worked
see,
there.
I um I think that the women were depicted as like hardworking, but also as like forward thinking. Because even in the video, it was like a narrator that said that the women believe that they would make history with the strikes and all that. And I think an example of this would be their working conditions and like them knowing that it wasn't right, like they shouldn't be working long hours or low wages. And then, like you said, around the 12-minute mark, actually, when they talk about the main focus of the factory being speed and how the women would make about 3,000 stitches per day, and then they couldn't make any mistakes, or they had to pay for those. So I think, in a way, the book was also slightly different when talking about the working conditions because I mean, obviously the movie is like all about the factory, and the book is like portions of it. But chapter 8, I think it was under the Rising Women,
Mm-hmm.
where it talked about the leisure class joining the line, and so they were being subjected to the same disrespect as the other workers, and so that actually made the newspaper to
yeah.
them, which is like weird to me, like because you weren't paying attention when these people were being treated poorly and disrespected. So that was just like,
Well, I thought it was strange. I don't know if you guys did, but in high school, we only learned about the fire. We didn't learn about everything that women had tried to do before to prevent something like that happening.
yeah,
And I
I
was
agree with you.
curious as to why that was left out and why
Could
something
you
wasn't
re-
done. beforehand.
Could you repeat that for me? I think you broke up on my end.
I was just I don't know, like in high school, they really largely leave out the strikes that women did, or at least they did in my history class.
I remember, of course, it's been a lot longer since I've been in high school since you guys, but I don't remember in any of my history classes learning any of this.
I remember learning about the fire, but it was just like an event that happened, not something that could have been prevented.
Sort of like an isolated event, actually. Like leading up to it, there was like nothing. So yeah, I agree with you. Even in college, actually, when I took history courses and I learned about this, we didn't really talk about the strikes. We talked about the like isolated event, actually, now that I think about it.
I think everybody just thinks that the strikes are boring or not necessary to talk about, or they're all the same, or I'm not sure really. Another interesting thing that I found was that at 20 minutes or around there, the reasoning from the employers for the mistreatment of these women, and why they were against the strikes and all that, was because they felt like employees were biting the hand that fed them. Did you guys hear that?
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
But you're making like $2 a day. Is it real? Are you really feeding these people? Because
right,
you're not actually.
These people were starving.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they go on strike, and you know, they ultimately had to choose between feeding their families and going back to work.
And then
giving up their calls, but
really, really difficult for them, because in the I think it was kind of in the beginning of the video where it talked about the location of the actual factory, and it talked about how it was like, wasn't it like not downtown, but it was in a place where you could like see the leisure class and their hats and all that, and then you go to work for $2 and you can't eat.
Yeah,
so
it's like right off to the side, and that's where the workers went, and everyone else went on with their day pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, I also noticed that in that scene, you don't really get a description of this in the book, but New York and other big cities like that were really dirty and crowded and not the best place to live. So when you're talking about women immigrants that worked in these places, I was just curious as to like what promise of a better future there.
Yeah, at 5:56, the girl talks about wanting to learn things and talks about being in a crowded city and being in the darkness, and how is this the dream that you're talking about the city being dirty, and they, the areas that these people had to live in, they were really crowded and extremely dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go put in there.
Yeah. The not the textbook didn't, but this video mentioned the fact that this triangle factory was like a desirable place to work. So if this is desirable, then what is everything else?
I would say it's other places.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know. So,
did you want to go over question 8, Sarah?
The question 8 was from last week.
Oh, was it?
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you guys think there was anything that could have been done differently that would have made people listen more than protesting, or did it really have to come down to like 400 people dying?
I think it really had to come down to all these people dying for it to really open their eyes. I mean, there at the end of the video, around 50:45, they were talking about, these women shouldn't die in vain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that started a big turning point in getting laws established to help people.
Yeah, but even in the text after the fire happened, it seemed like they still had to like lobby for change after that. Like, you think it would just make sense to go ahead and do something, but even after everybody mourned and all was said and done, they still had to strike and protest. And
I think like some of the ones who were against it were probably, I think it probably opened their eyes a little more, so they, you know, had more allies on their side. But
In chapter 8, I mean, I think these women were so used to like being disrespected and the low wages and the conditions, and that kind of like normalized it, so that like outside people really didn't care about it until, you know, people actually died, and then leisure class women were working there, so they cared about them apparently. And in chapter 8, it's a quote from Schneiderman, and basically saying Schneiderman delivered a bitter eulogy. This is not the first time girls have been burned alive in this city. Every year, thousands of us are maimed. The life of men and women is so cheap, and property is so sacred. There are so many of us for one job. It matters little if we are burned to death. So basically saying that like this doesn't even matter.
yeah.
So it's like what could they do? Like what could actually happen?
when I read that quote, I mean, obviously they weren't literally burned alive, but they were mistreated in a variety of other ways. All of them. This was not just an isolated event. This is a desirable place to work compared to everywhere else, like we said before. And that's probably why people didn't pay any attention to it, even more so than they wouldn't have at the other ones. Did anybody?
The whole thing is a sad situation. I cried so hard. Sorry.
These weren't just adult women. All of the women being talked about there. I think one daughter was 13 and another one, her 17-year-old son worked there, which I thought was interesting. I didn't realize men worked there. I thought this was a strictly, like, the women were employed by men. I didn't realize that there could also be men working there.
There was also a 14-year-old that died in that fire. 14-year-olds should not be working in those should not be working, period. Not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the book talked, I can't remember if it was chapter 8 or chapter 7, but about child labor and about how that wasn't really advocated for until afterwards.
Yeah, the child labor laws passed, I think, I've got it right here written down. 1912, the Department of Labor, this is on page 419, had established a children's bureau that was designed to end child labor. And then again in 1916, the Keating-Owen Act didn't allow children under age 16 paid for labor. That's on page 419.
Because their wages were so low, their children had to work. Everybody had to work. So that's why it was an issue, you know.
In the book, it even talked about how
a lot of people. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
You're fine. How parents didn't really even agree with it. Like, because like you said, Rebecca, the children's wages actually supported the family as well. So they needed their children to work. So everyone wasn't in agreement with the child labor laws being in effect.
Yeah, it was either your child worked or you guys didn't have money. But today that would just be common sense that children don't work. I just think that that's interesting.
Right.
Is there anything else that you guys want to add before I stop the broadcast?
I want to add to question number 8, or the starter number 8, about what this video made me wonder is if they didn't set the fires themselves, the owners.
I had thought that I had read something about that, and I was thinking about that during the film. I had read somewhere that that was a possibility.
Well, I had read something in doing a little research on this fire, had like 3 or 4 other businesses that caught on fire.
Okay.
It was, I think I found that on the History Channel.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. But the fact that this fire started on the 8th floor, and that was at 3447, it started out on the, like several minutes before, on the 8th floor. The owners escaped from the 10th floor roof. But then everybody in the middle, they didn't sound any alarms. And, you know, these women had just come off this strike. They had gotten shorter work days. They were already struggling in their business. And, you know, struggling because $1 million a year wasn't enough back then. And, you know, they were tried for manslaughter, and this is at 50-20. You know, they were acquitted. They took their insurance money, and nobody ever heard from them again. And they did nothing to help these families. The people of New York helped them.
Well, I wonder.
So I'm thinking maybe this is my conspiracy theory self. It's like they set the fire because their business was floundering just to get their insurance payout.
Yeah, I agree.
It also probably could have gotten out of hand. Like maybe they were trying to scare these women a little bit, and then they just couldn't control it. That's another theory, but.
Well, I don't know, because you would think that, you know, scaring them with something like that, and, you know, the doors are locked, which they would not get away with that. You know, they have to be able to get out.
Right.
And I would think that would make them push harder for safety precautions and, you know, better work environment. But I think they just wanted their insurance money. Just a little observation. The fact that after doing my own little research, seeing that they had like 3 or 4 other businesses that.
Right. Like, especially with your history with fires in your buildings, you should probably like take precaution or know what to do to not have your building catch on fire.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess we're done until next. Are we still okay for next Tuesday? Do you know, Sarah, your schedule yet?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good for next Tuesday.
Okay. Well, I'll see you guys on Tuesday then.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Happy 4th.
Happy 4th.